Okay, welcome. If you're looking to get knowledgeable fast about how people on the autism spectrum experience the world, well, today's deep dive is really for you. We're focusing squarely on sensory processing differences.
Mm,
Our mission, to pull together what the sources say, not just defining sensory issues, but really getting into the why. Why do they happen? And how do proven strategies like ABA, applied behavior analysis, help?
right, providing those effective tools for daily living.
Exactly. And the key thing to grasp right away is this: these differences. They're wired into the brain, how it receives input. It's not a choice, definitely not bad behavior.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that. Because the significance here is it's huge. Sensory differences really do profoundly impact daily function, well-being.
Things we take for granted.
Totally. Everyday tasks like, the sound of a vacuum cleaner or just standing in a bright, crowded room. For some individuals, that can be incredibly difficult, sometimes actually painful.
Wow.
So if we understand the why, the mechanism, we can offer much better, truly tailored support.
Okay. So to get us started, the sources often break down sensory responses into like three main categories. And it's important to remember someone can experience a mix of these, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It can change depending on the situation, stress levels, even time of day. It's dynamic.
So first up is hypersensitivity or over-responsiveness.
Yeah, this is when the brain basically processes sensory input as much stronger, much more intense than it maybe objectively is.
So it feels overwhelming.
Overwhelming, yeah, or unbearable, painful sometimes. Think about sound. For someone with auditory hypersensitivity, it's not just that a fire alarm is loud, which it is for everyone, but everyday sounds.
Like what?
The hum of the fridge, maybe the air conditioning kicking on, squeaky shoes down a hall. These can feel physically sharp, almost damaging.
And touch, tactile stuff, that's a big one too, right? We hear about clothing tags all the time.
We do, and it's valid, but it's often more than just tags. It could be the seam inside a sock, the texture of certain fabrics, or even a light, unexpected touch.
Like someone brushing past you.
Exactly. That can trigger a real physical distress reaction. Not just annoyance, but genuine distress.
Okay, so that's hypersensitive. What's the flip side?
Right, so the flip side is hyposensitivity, under-responsiveness.
Meaning not enough input gets through.
Precisely. The brain just doesn't register the sensory information strongly enough. So the person needs more intensity, more input to even become aware of it.
Okay, so that explains perhaps why you might see someone who doesn't seem bothered by, say, a scrape or a bruise.
Or maybe doesn't react to hot or cold temperatures the way you'd expect. They might not turn around if you call their name, even in a quiet room.
And does this relate to, like, clumsiness sometimes?
It absolutely can. Bumping into things, tripping. If you're not getting clear signals about where your body is in space, coordination becomes much harder.
Okay, got it. Hypersensitive, hyposensitive. What's the third one?
The third category is sensory seeking. And this is an active craving for stimulation,
Seeking it out.
actively seeking it out. And what's really fascinating and crucial to understand is that this seeking behavior is functional.
Functional how?
It's a strategy. It's used to either sort of wake up a system that's hyposensitive, get more input in, or it can be used to provide predictable input to help calm down an overwhelmed hypersensitive system.
Wait, okay, hold on. That seems contradictory. If someone is super sensitive to, say, light touch, like a soft blanket bothers them, how could they also crave deep pressure, like a tight hug or one of those weighted blankets?
Oh, that's such a great question because it highlights the complexity, doesn't it?
It does.
The thing is, the neural pathways for different types of touch can be distinct. Light, moving touch might register on one pathway as unpredictable, alerting, maybe even alarming.
Okay.
But deep pressure, firm, consistent compressive input hits different receptors, different pathways. For many, that deep pressure is grounding. It's predictable, it feels safe and incredibly regulating. It literally helps organize the nervous system.
So it's not just touch as one single thing.
Not at all. So we see seeking across different senses too. Movement like spinning, jumping, swinging. Visually, maybe staring at spinning fans or lights. Sound-wise, perhaps humming or making repetitive noises. It's all about getting that regulating input.
That makes so much more sense. Okay, moving on then. Most people know the basic five senses, right? Sight, sound, smell, taste, touch.
Right, the classics.
But the sources emphasize, and this is really interesting, that to understand sensory processing in autism fully, we need to look at 8 sensory systems.
Yeah, 8 is the commonly accepted number in this context. We can quickly touch on the familiar 5, but maybe with a bit more autistic context.
Good idea.
Okay, so auditory. It's not just volume. A huge piece is filtering. The struggle to tune out background noise makes places like malls or classrooms incredibly stressful.
Right. Visual can be that extreme sensitivity to bright lights, like fluorescence, but also sometimes a deep focus or fascination with specific visual details or patterns.
Mhm. And olfactory and gustatory, smell and taste. Those sensitivities can be intense, leading to really restricted diets, which is a major challenge for individuals and families, health implications, social implications.
Definitely. Okay, so those are the five. What about the other three, the less familiar ones?
These are super important for regulation. First, the vestibular system.
Okay, what's that?
It's located in the inner ear, and it governs our sense of balance, movement, and spatial orientation, where our head is in relation to gravity.
Ah,
And just like the others, it can be over-responsive or under-responsive, hypersensitive. That might look like a real fear of heights, avoiding swings, escalators, carousels. Any change in movement feels threatening.
and hyposensitive, under-responsive.
That often looks like sensory seeking, constant movement, rocking, spinning, jumping, needing to be in motion to feel where they are, to feel regulated and grounded.
Right, that seeking we talked about. Okay, the vestibular, what's next?
Next is proprioceptive input. This is often called our body awareness sense.
How you know where your arms are without looking.
Exactly. It's feedback from our muscles and joints telling the brain about body position, pressure, stretch, movement.
And if that's under-responsive,
That can lead to that clumsiness we mentioned earlier. Also, difficulty grading movement, like pressing too hard with a pencil and breaking it, or maybe giving hugs that are too tight without realizing it.
okay. And seeking proprioceptive input.
Oh, yeah. This is a big one for regulation for many people. Craving deep pressure, weighted blankets, tight hugs, crashing into cushions, chewing on things firmly, carrying heavy objects. It's all that input that clearly defines the body's boundaries and feels very calming and organizing.
So that deep pressure connection again.
Absolutely. That input basically shouts to the brain, you are here, you are safe, you are contained. It's incredibly powerful.
Wow. So these less known systems, vestibular and proprioceptive, seem really fundamental for just feeling okay in the world.
They really are. For many autistic individuals, actively seeking out or managing vestibular and proprioceptive input is key to staying regulated throughout the day.
Okay, so let's talk about the impact then. When these systems aren't working, typically, when there's constant overload or understimulation, what does that look like in daily life?
The impact is, well, it's pervasive. Emotionally, constant sensory distress leads to chronic stress, high anxiety. It's exhausting.
And that can lead to meltdowns.
Shutdowns, exactly. Those moments of extreme dysregulation. A meltdown is often an outward expression of being completely overwhelmed, like an emotional explosion, because the system just can't cope anymore. A shutdown is more of an internal withdrawal. The person might become unresponsive, seem vacant, just completely check out. It's a self-preservation mechanism to conserve energy.
Gosh. And practically speaking,
It affects everything. Getting dressed can be a battle because of tactile sensitivities. Mealtimes difficult due to taste or texture aversions. School assemblies, birthday parties, grocery stores, these can be impossible environments.
leading to isolation.
Often, yes. Avoidance of challenging sensory environments can really limit participation in community life, school, even family activities.
Which brings us to something called stimming, repetitive behaviors.
Yes, and this is so important. Things like hand flapping, rocking back and forth, maybe spinning objects, making repetitive sounds.
People often see that as, I don't know, weird or something to be stopped.
And that's where we really need to shift perspective, based on what the science tells us. Stimming self-stimulatory behavior is rarely meaningless. It's usually a vital, functional coping mechanism.
Coping how?
It's about self-regulation. If a classroom is too loud and chaotic, hypersensitivity, rocking provides predictable, rhythmic vestibular input that can be calming, like an anchor. If the world feels unpredictable, maybe the repetitive visual input of flapping hands brings a sense of control. It can also be used to increase input if someone is hyposensitive.
So it's communication, it's serving a purpose.
Absolutely. It's a way to manage an internal state, to cope with sensory input that feels overwhelming or insufficient. Trying to suppress it without offering alternative coping strategies can actually increase distress.
Okay, that's a huge insight. So, knowing that stimming is functional, knowing these behaviors are rooted in this different sensory wiring, how do we help? How do we move from just understanding to providing, like, practical, productive support.
Right, and that's where evidence-based approaches like applied behavior analysis, ABA, come in.
Hmm.
ABA provides a systematic framework and tools to teach adaptive skills.
So how does ABA tackle sensory challenges specifically?
Well, a cornerstone is the functional behavior assessment, the FBA.
We've talked about FBAs before, looking at the why behind a behavior.
Exactly. But in a sensory context, the FBA is critical for figuring out the sensory function. Is a behavior happening because the lights are too bright and the person wants to escape that input, that sensory escape or avoidance?
Okay.
Or is the behavior, say, jumping up and down, happening because they're seeking intense movement to feel regulated because they're understimulated? That's sensory seeking.
That distinction changes everything for intervention, doesn't it?
Completely. If you know the function, you can address the need rather than just trying to stop the behavior. It shifts the goal from mere compliance to actually supporting functional self-regulation. You can start to predict when overload might happen and be proactive.
Okay, so FBA identifies the sensory function. What's next?
Then we move into teaching coping skills. This means systematically teaching alternative, more adaptive ways to meet that sensory need or manage the challenging situation.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, say a child gets overwhelmed by noise in the lunchroom and typically drops to the floor screaming. The FBA suggests this is sensory escape. Instead of just managing the screaming, we teach them a replacement behavior.
Like asking for help.
Exactly. Maybe teaching them to point to a picture card for headphones, or verbally ask for quiet please, or request to take a break at a designated calm down corner. We empower them with a functional way to communicate their need and get it met appropriately.
Giving them tools.
Giving them tools and agency. So another key strategy, especially for strong aversions, is systematic desensitization.
Okay, that sounds like gradually getting used to something.
That's the core idea. It's a very careful, step-by-step approach to increase tolerance to a sensory input that's currently overwhelming. But crucially, it has to be done with the individual at their pace.
So the person has to feel in control.
Absolutely. Control and predictability are key. If we're working on tolerating a new food texture, maybe the first step is just having the food on the same table. Then maybe touching it briefly. Then smelling it. Then a tiny taste. Each step is small, predictable, and reinforced.
Reinforced how?
Through positive reinforcement. Consistently providing some kind of reward praise, a preferred item, a token for engaging with the process, for trying, for tolerating even a small step. We're reinforcing the effort and the adaptive behavior, not just the outcome.
That makes sense. Build success slowly.
Exactly. And finally, we really can't talk about effective sensory support without mentioning collaboration, specifically with occupational therapists, OTs.
Right, OTs often focus heavily on sensory integration.
They do. And the best outcomes happen when ABA practitioners and OTs work together as a team. It's really a holistic approach.
How does that partnership work, ideally?
Well, you can think of it like this. ABA often focuses on teaching the functional behavior related to sensory needs, the when and how to use a strategy. When you feel overwhelmed by noise, this is how you ask for headphones.
Okay.
The OT often provides the expertise on the sensory tools and activities themselves. They might assess and recommend which specific type of headphones work best, or identify the most effective types of movement, deep pressure tools, or environmental modifications for that specific individual's sensory profile.
So ABA teaches the skill, OT provides the tool or environmental support.
That's a good way to put it. ABA helps shape the behavioral response. OT helps identify and implement the optimal sensory input or modification. When they collaborate, sharing data and goals, the support becomes much more comprehensive and effective. You really need both perspectives.
That collaboration piece sounds vital. Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. We've gone from the brain wiring behind sensory differences
The neurological roots.
to the three main response types, hyper, hypo, and seeking. We dug into those extra senses, especially vestibular and proprioceptive,
Crucial for regulation.
identified stimming not as a problem, but as a vital coping mechanism.
Communication.
Right. And then we explored how systematic approaches like ABA, using tools like FBA, teaching coping skills, desensitization, and positive reinforcement offer practical ways to help, and the importance of teaming up with OT.
A pretty thorough journey. So what does this all really mean for you, the listener?
I think the core message is the power of understanding. Recognizing that behavior, especially a behavior that seems challenging, is often communication about an underlying sensory experience.
Too much input. or not enough.
Exactly. And understanding those sensory roots is the absolute key to providing support that is not just effective, but also compassionate and truly customized.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with, considering how unique sensory experiences are. If one person finds deep pressure, maybe from a weighted vest, intensely calming, that proprioceptive seeking we talked about.
How might that exact same vest, that same pressure, feel to someone else who is, say, tactily hypersensitive? Someone who might experience that same pressure as trapping or smothering or just intensely uncomfortable.
That's a powerful point.
It really highlights why individualized assessment and support are not just nice to haves, they're essential. We have to tailor everything to the person's unique sensory profile.
Couldn't agree more. A vital point to carry forward.
That's all for today's deep dive.